Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are exploring a book that has provided a massive breath of fresh air and profound clarity to millions of people around the world. We are diving into a comprehensive, story-driven summary of Adult Children of Emotionally Immature Parents by psychologist Lindsay C. Gibson. Have you ever felt completely lonely, even when standing in a room surrounded by your family? Have you ever felt like you were the only responsible adult in the house, even when you were just a young child? If you have carried an unexplained weight of self-doubt, hyperindependence, or a constant feeling that your emotional needs do not matter, this book holds the exact key to understanding your past. Grab a warm cup of tea, settle in, and let us break down how emotional immaturity shapes family dynamics and how you can reclaim your authentic life. The unseen wound of emotional loneliness. Let us begin our story by meeting a man named Alex. Alex grew up in a comfortable suburban house. He had plenty of food, nice clothes, a clean bedroom, and parents who attended his school sports games. On paper, everything looked completely normal and functional. But inside, Alex carried a heavy, persistent feeling of cold, empty isolation. Whenever Alex tried to talk to his parents about his deepest anxieties, his fears, or his dreams, something strange happened. His parents would brush him off, tell him that he was overreacting, or instantly shift the conversation back to their own daily stresses. If Alex was upset, his parents became annoyed or defensive, treating his emotions as an inconvenience or an attack. Lindsay Gibson explains that Alex was suffering from emotional loneliness. Emotional loneliness is a subtle, invisible pain that occurs when children grow up with parents who are physically present but emotionally unavailable. Emotionally immature parents can handle the practical duties of parenting, such as making dinner, driving to doctor appointments, and paying for school supplies. But when it comes to emotional connection, empathy, and psychological safety, they freeze, shut down, or lash out because children rely on their parents for emotional grounding. A child in this situation learns a dangerous lesson. They conclude that their inner world is uninteresting, wrong, or dangerous to express. Alex learned to bury his feelings, hide his vulnerability, and rely entirely on himself. He grew up believing that he was somehow defective, when in reality, he was simply starving for emotional connection in a home that lacked the capacity to give it. The 4 profiles of emotionally immature parents. As Alex matures into an adult, he begins to analyze his parents' behavior and realizes that emotional immaturity manifests in distinct, recognizable ways. Lindsay Gibson categorizes emotionally immature parents into 4 primary types. The first profile is the emotional parent. These parents are entirely ruled by their volatile, shifting feelings. They swing unpredictably from affection to explosive anger, anxiety, or deep despair. Living with an emotional parent feels like walking on thin ice over a frozen lake. Every family member must constantly tread lightly, monitoring the parent's mood to prevent a major meltdown. The entire household revolves around keeping this parent stable, leaving no room for the child's emotional needs. The second profile is the driven parent. Driven parents often look exceptionally successful from the outside. They are perfectionists, compulsively busy, and obsessed with achievements, goals, and social appearances. However, they treat their children like project management tasks to be completed, rather than unique human beings to be known. They dictate how their children should act, what careers they should choose, and how they should look. They offer praise only when the child conforms to their strict expectations, but criticize fiercely if the child displays authentic individuality. The third profile is the passive parent. Passive parents are often gentle, affectionate, and easygoing, but they completely abandon their protective parental role. They play second fiddle to a dominant, angry, or volatile partner. When real conflict or abuse arises in the family, the passive parent pulls back, freezes, minimizes the problem, or pretends everything is fine. They fail to stand up for their children because they are too terrified of confrontation themselves. While children often love the passive parent, they are left feeling deeply abandoned when real emotional protection is required. The fourth profile is the rejecting parent. These parents build a giant emotional wall around themselves. They do not want to be bothered by their children and interact mostly through commands, dismissals, or cold withdrawal. They view their children as a burden, an interruption, or an annoyance. Children raised by rejecting parents learn very quickly to stay out of the way, ask for nothing, and expect zero affection from their caregivers. Internalizers and externalizers, two different ways to cope. Children are remarkably resilient, and they develop specific coping mechanisms to survive in households where emotional connection is lacking. Lindsay Gibson explains that children generally fall into one of two categories when dealing with emotional deprivation: externalizers or internalizers. Externalizers try to solve their psychological discomfort by acting out on the outside world. When they feel anxious, neglected, or empty, they seek immediate fixes outside of themselves. They may exhibit impulsive behavior, engage in substance abuse, act aggressively, or demand constant attention from others. Externalizers rarely engage in self-reflection. Instead, they blame the world, their partners, or bad luck for all their problems, constantly looking for external solutions to internal pain. Internalizers, like Alex, take the exact opposite approach. Internalizers are deep thinkers, feelers, and self-reflectors. They believe that the key to solving life problems lies entirely within themselves. When their parents are cold, distant, or angry, internalizers do not blame their parents. They blame themselves. They think to themselves, if I just work harder, if I become nicer, if I get better grades, or if I fix my personal flaws, my parents will finally love me and pay attention to me. Internalizers possess strong empathy and acute sensitivity to the feelings of others. However, this strength turns into a heavy burden. Internalizers become overfunctioners in adult relationships. They take on all the emotional labor, apologize for things that are not their fault, and continuously sacrifice their own well-being to keep others happy. They often attract emotionally unavailable partners, friends, and bosses in adulthood because being around people who take without giving feels familiar and normal. The illusion of the healing fantasy and the role self. As Alex moves through his 20s and 30s, he remains trapped in a subtle, powerful, psychological loop that Lindsay Gibson calls the healing fantasy. The healing fantasy is the subconscious belief that one day, if we just find the right words, achieve enough success, or act out the right role, our emotionally immature parents will suddenly wake up, transform, and give us the deep love, validation, and emotional intimacy we always deserved. Alex spends years trying to explain his feelings to his mother, hoping that this time she will understand. But every single conversation ends in disappointment, guilt trips, or defensive attacks. To keep this healing fantasy alive, children create a false personality known as the role self. The role self is a mask designed to gain approval and avoid conflict in an emotionally immature family. Alex plays the role of the quiet, low-maintenance, high-achieving son who never complains and never makes demands. He buries his authentic desires, his natural anger, and his true personality beneath this polite, helpful mask. The tragedy of the role self is that even when people praise the mask, the person behind it feels completely unloved. Deep down, Alex knows that his parents do not love his true self. They only love the convenient performance he puts on for them. True healing begins when an adult child stops playing the role, gives up the impossible healing fantasy, and accepts the painful truth. Your parents are who they are, and they will likely never have the capacity to give you emotional depth, freedom through observational awareness, and detached relating. So, how does Alex break free from this exhausting cycle? How does anyone recover from an emotionally immature upbringing? Lindsay Gibson provides a practical framework called observational awareness and detached relating. Instead of walking into a family gathering, hoping for deep, emotional connection, Alex learns to shift his mindset into that of a calm, neutral observer. He stops reacting automatically to his parents' emotional traps, guilt trips, or critical remarks. He observes their behavior as if he were an anthropologist studying a subject in the wild, when his mother makes a passive-aggressive comment about his life choices. Alex no longer gets upset, defensive, or heartbroken. He takes a breath, notices the comment, recognizes it as a reflection of her emotional limitations, and remains completely calm. He practices 3 core principles of detached relating: neutral observation, clear boundary setting, and managing contact. Neutral observation allows you to stay grounded in your adult brain rather than slipping back into your vulnerable childhood emotions. Setting boundaries means deciding in advance what topics you will discuss, how long you will stay, and what behavior you will not tolerate. Managing contact means focusing on the interaction itself rather than wishing the person were different. Alex realizes that emotional maturity means setting realistic expectations. You cannot draw fresh water from an empty well. When Alex stops expecting his parents to be mature, self-aware, or empathetic, his chronic frustration and anger instantly evaporate. He accepts them as they are, while keeping a healthy distance to protect his own emotional sanity. Reclaiming your true self and building mature connections. The final phase of recovery is about rebuilding your life around your authentic self. 4. Internalizers who spend decades putting everyone else first. This requires learning how to prioritize their own needs without feeling guilty. Reclaiming your true self means honoring your feelings, desires, physical energy, and personal limits. It means understanding that your emotions are not inconvenient weaknesses, but essential compass, needles that guide you toward what is safe, healthy, and fulfilling. It also involves surrounding yourself with emotionally mature people. Lindsay Gibson outlines the key characteristics of emotionally mature adults, so you can recognize them in potential friends, partners, and colleagues. Emotionally mature people are consistent, reliable, and self-reflective. When a conflict arises, they do not explode, stonewall, or play the victim. Instead, they can discuss feelings calmly, take responsibility for their mistakes, and work toward a mutual solution. They respect your boundaries, honor your individuality, and offer genuine, reciprocal empathy. When Alex starts seeking out emotionally mature relationships, his entire life changes. For the first time, he experiences friendships and romance where he does not have to play a role, hide his needs, or perform emotional labor just to be valued. He can simply drop his guard, be his authentic self, and feel deeply accepted for who he truly is. Wrapping up our journey toward emotional freedom, let us take a moment to look back at the liberating journey outlined in Lindsay Gibson's landmark book. We started by uncovering the hidden wound of emotional loneliness, recognizing that physical care without emotional connection leaves a deep, lasting ache in a growing child. we explored the 4 profiles of emotionally immature parents, the volatile emotional parent, the perfectionist-driven parent, the passive avoiding parent, and the cold, rejecting parent. We saw how internalizers sacrifice their authentic self to keep the peace, and how the false promise of the healing fantasy keeps adults trapped in toxic family dynamics for years. Most importantly, we learn that true emotional freedom arrives when we step into neutral observation, drop impossible expectations, set firm boundaries, and reclaim our authentic voice. Healing is never about changing your parents. It is about changing your relationship with yourself and choosing to build a life rooted in emotional maturity. Thank you so much for spending time with me today. If this storytelling summary helped you better understand your past or gave you clarity on your emotional health, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. Take good care of your emotional well-being, honor your authentic self, and remember that you deserve rich, respectful, and deeply mature connections in your life.